To accomplish its mission, a ship needs a complement of trained men, a sound hull, and unfailing power. Today, many ships designed to perform combat missions are powered by diesel engines. The performance of a diesel engine, like any internal combustion engine, depends on the correct operation of its valves. Maximum power, quiet, smooth operation, and durability are all influenced by the operation of the valve system. To get maximum power, the valves are timed so they open and close at exactly the right instant in the cycle of engine operation. When the valves are closed, they must seat tight to resist the high pressures of the burning gases. A valve not seating permits the gases to leak around the valve face. This results in a loss of power, rough operation of the engine, and may even result in engine failure. Then the ship, its crew, and its mission are in danger. Valve leakage is caused largely by improper clearance between the valve and the rocker arm. When the clearance is too small, the valve is held open when it should be closed. This causes loss of power. When the clearance is too great, the valve face is hammered against the seat and the tip against the rocker arm. This causes wear and leads to valve failures, such as bent valves, broken valve faces, or guttering of the valve face and seats. Leakage then occurs which cannot be stopped until the valves are removed and reseated or replaced. Both too great or too small a clearance between the valve and the rocker arm will cause trouble. Then what is correct clearance? The best answer is, of course, no clearance at all, or zero lash, as it is called. However, it is impossible to maintain this ideal condition with adjustable rocker arms, because in any overhead valve engine, the valve clearance is changed by changes in engine temperatures. Unless a certain amount of clearance between the valve and rocker arm is provided to allow for this change, the change in clearance may be sufficient to hold the valve off its seat. Now, it is easy to see that in providing sufficient clearance to allow for this expansion when the engine is hot, we are going to have too much space between the valve and the rocker arm when the engine is cold. If the efficiency of the engine is to be maintained throughout its entire operating range, cold, normal, or excessively hot, then correct clearance for all engine temperatures must be maintained. That is the function of the zero-lash hydraulic valve adjuster. Literally, a valve adjuster which automatically maintains zero lash or zero clearance under all operating conditions to compensate for expansion, contraction, or wear in the valve train. The hydraulic unit itself consists of a plunger operating in a cylinder with a ball check valve. A separating spring holds the plunger against the rocker arm with a mild pressure. In operation, the space below the plunger is filled with oil supplied from the lubrication system. Now you can see that when this space below the plunger is completely filled with oil from the lubricating system and this ball check valve is closed, the entire unit will be solid enough to push the valve down when the push rod pushes up on the adjuster and valve rocker arm. As the oil is practically incompressible, it acts as a solid column under the plunger and pushes the rocker arm up and the valve down as firmly as if it were a piece of steel. Now, if this column of oil is permitted to leak just enough to allow for the expansion of the valve train when the engine warms up, then even with zero clearance, the valve will still be able to seat. Actually, the plunger will move down only a fraction of a thousandth of an inch per stroke, but this is sufficient to compensate for the small expansion of the valve train which can occur in any one cycle. When the engine valve seats, the adjuster spring holds the plunger against the end of the adjusting nut. The space created by the slight upward movement of the plunger is immediately filled by oil from the reservoir below. In this way, the hydraulic valve adjuster adjusts its own length automatically to compensate for expansion and contraction in the valve train under all operating conditions. There are two basic types of zero-lash hydraulic valve adjusters used in Navy diesel engines. One type has the check valve assembled in the cylinder and is usually installed in the push rod end of the rocker arm. The other type has the check valve installed in the plunger and is usually installed in a bridge at the valve end of the rocker arm. These two types of adjusters are fundamentally the same in operation. Like any device with moving parts, the hydraulic adjuster may require occasional service attention. Trouble can usually be detected immediately by excessive noise in the valve system. When the valves are noisy, you will have one of three conditions. You may find all the valves noisy, two or more but not all noisy, or just one valve may be noisy. It is first necessary to locate which adjusters are not operating properly. You can use the wooden handle of a light hammer against the valve spring retainer to feel the excessive slap that occurs as the valve seats when one of the adjusters is not maintaining the clearance at zero. Press the end of the handle firmly against the valve spring retainer. Compare the feel of a suspected adjuster with the smooth action of a quiet one. Once you get the feel of this comparison, you will always be able to spot a noisy adjuster. When all the valves are noisy, the cause is almost certainly some condition of the oil supply. That is, no oil at all, not enough oil, or oil pressure too high. Complete failure of the oil supply will be due either to plugging of the oil line running to the adjuster affected or to the fact that the engine has run out of oil. Whenever adjusters become noisy, it is a warning that the lubrication system should be checked. Not enough oil may be due to any of a number of conditions: partial stoppage of oil lines, low oil pressure, unusual leakage, or the amount of oil in the oil reservoir being so low that insufficient oil is supplied to the pump inlet. Now, let's consider the cause when two or more, but not all the valves are noisy. When the noisy valves are limited to just one cylinder, the trouble might be failure of the oil supply to that specific cylinder. Next, let's talk about other conditions which may cause a single valve to be noisy. The immediate cause may be a stuck valve, or a valve that is loose in the guide, too rapid leakage, a stuck plunger, or a leaking check valve. Then too, if leakage between the cylinder and plunger is too rapid, the plunger will not be supported by the column of oil. This will permit the valve to close at too high a speed, causing a slap as it seats. When noisy valves are caused by some condition in the adjusters themselves, it is best to remove the adjusters for inspection. To remove the valve adjusters from the Enterprise 6 and 8 engine, first remove the nut from the oil line, then remove the rocker arm shaft nuts and loosen the lock nut. Lift the rocker shaft and then remove both the nut and lock nut. Remove the valve adjuster and adjuster body from the rocker arm, placing them on a rack or other container to protect them from damage. Now let's examine the adjusters. A leaking check valve may be temporarily fouled with dirt, or the ball seat may have been damaged by foreign particles. Approximately 90% of all adjuster trouble is due to foreign matter in the oil. Hydraulic valve adjusters usually warn of the presence of foreign matter before any other part of the engine is badly damaged. And when one plunger is stuck by dirt or other materials, all the adjusters should be cleaned. Wash the adjusters thoroughly with solvent. Now here is a very important point. Although the complete hydraulic units are interchangeable, the plungers inside the cylinders are not interchangeable. It is therefore best to keep the parts of each complete unit grouped together at all times so that there will be no possibility of mixing any of them after they are taken apart. Because the adjuster may be filled with oil, it might be difficult to move the plunger in the cylinder and give the impression that the plunger is stuck. However, if the plunger is actually stuck, it will be stuck down, like this. To remove a sticking plunger from its cylinder, hold the cylinder firmly and grip the plunger with a pair of pliers wrapped with several layers of tape. Or, on the other type of adjuster, use a snap ring, or bend a piece of wire the same diameter as the size of the holes in the plunger, and pull outwards on the plunger with a slight twisting motion. This will allow the plunger to come out of the cylinder. In this type of hydraulic unit, the ball and ball retainer are loose and held in place by the spring and may be removed for thorough cleaning. But particular care should be taken that the parts are not lost. If a part is replaced, the entire unit should be rechecked for proper operation. The other type of unit should also be checked to determine whether or not it will operate properly. With cylinder held upright, start the plunger into the cylinder. Depress the plunger and release it quickly, like this. The kickback will show whether the clearance between plunger and cylinder is correct and whether the ball check valve is operating properly. If, however, the plunger stays down when depressed, like this, one of three things may be wrong. The check valve may be held open by foreign matter, the ball seat may be damaged, or clearance between plunger and cylinder may be too great. The entire unit should be thoroughly re-washed. If after re-washing the plunger still does not kick back properly, then the entire hydraulic unit should be discarded. When plungers are put back in their cylinders, make it a point to feel for any grit that may be present. When reinstalling the plunger into the cylinder, give it a twist while it is fully depressed in the direction which would wind up the spring. This will cause the end of the spring to snap into its seat. Particular attention should be paid to the oil lines running to the valve lifters. It is especially important to make sure that dirt and sludge are removed. The engine maintenance manual should be referred to for specific recommendations covering the procedure to be followed in cleaning the lubrication system and oil lines. After the adjusters have been thoroughly cleaned and inspected and the oil system checked, we are now ready to install the adjusters. Place the adjusters and adjuster body in position in the rocker arm. Bar the engine over until the cam lobes are in their proper position for reinstalling the rocker arm, that is, the valve closed position. Assemble the rocker arm to the rocker shaft and secure it to the studs with hex nuts. Screw down the adjusting screw until the valve begins to ride slightly open at all times. Back off the adjusting screw 1/2 turn, which is equal to 1/16 inch oil column in the adjuster body. Then tighten the adjusting screw lock nut. After all the rocker arms have been installed and the clearance between the end of the push rod and adjuster is properly adjusted, carefully check for any oil leaks. The adjusters will now be quite noisy since they contain no oil, but this is no cause for alarm. A certain amount of time is required for each of the reservoirs to become filled and, in turn, for the pressure chambers under the plungers to fill with oil. The engine should be run at the lowest speed, which produces maximum oil pressure. The valves will become quiet as each of the adjusters become filled. On an average, this will take from a few seconds to 5 minutes. It will be longer than that with cold oil. If not quiet within an hour, the adjusters and lubrication system should be rechecked. The time required for any given unit to become quiet is not an indication of the condition of the unit, but means only that that particular one has a larger amount of air to dispose of than some of the others. Once the adjusters are filled and the engine is returned to idling speed, standard oil pressure must be maintained to keep the adjusters filled with oil. Sometimes, after an adjuster has filled with oil and is quiet, it may become noisy. This is due to air in the oil lines, and after running the engine a sufficient length of time to expel the air, the adjuster will become quiet. Obviously, if the adjusters do not all become quiet within the specified time limits, it is necessary to recheck them and also to check over the lubrication system. You will recall that there were two basic types of zero-lash hydraulic valve adjusters used on Navy engines. We have been describing the type as used on the Enterprise 6 and 8-cylinder engines. A slightly different type of valve adjuster is used on Cleveland Diesel Model 268A engines. These are installed in a bridge attached to the valve end of the rocker arm. To remove the valve adjusters from these engines, remove the nuts attaching the rocker arm bracket to the cylinder head and remove the rocker arm and bracket assemblies. Remove the snap rings holding the valve adjusters in the bridge and remove the valve adjusters from the bridge, placing them on a rack or other container to protect them from damage. If the valve adjuster sticks in the valve bridge, it can be forced out with compressed air. The disassembly, cleaning, inspection, and reassembly of this valve adjuster is the same as that for other valve adjusters. Place the adjusters in position in the valve bridges and secure them with the snap rings. Then install the rocker arms and bridges in position on the cylinder head. Turn the bridge adjusting screw until there is a definite clearance between the bridge and the valve stems. Then tighten the adjusting screw with a feeler gauge between the adjuster and the front valve until the adjuster just contacts the front valve stem. Remove the feeler gauge and tighten the adjusting screw one full turn and tighten the lock nut. This will give you 60 to 90 thousandths clearance, or the correct clearance for proper operation. The Cleveland Diesel Model 278A engine uses a zero-lash adjuster of the same type as the Model 268A just shown. The adjusters are also installed in the bridge at the valve end of the rocker arm. The rocker arm assembly is removed, take out the snap ring, use compressed air to force a sticking adjuster from the valve bridge, disassemble, clean, inspect, and reassemble the same as for the other valve lifter. Install and tighten the adjusting nut one full turn after the adjuster contacts the front valve stem. entirely different type of valve adjuster is used in the electromotive Model 567 diesel engine. These adjusters are installed in a bridge attached to the valve end of the rocker arm and operate just the reverse of the zero lash adjuster. The body is pressed into the bridge. The ball check and retainer are assembled to the body and operate against a spring. The plunger is assembled over the spring and into the body and is held in place by a snap ring. This is just the reverse of the zero lash adjuster installed in the Cleveland diesel engines. To remove the valve adjuster, first remove the lube oil line from camshaft bearing cap to rocker arm shaft. Then remove the rocker arm nuts. Lift the rocker arm shaft and bracket assembly from the studs. Then remove the valve bridges from the engine. Thoroughly clean the valve bridges and adjusters in clean solvent. Then blow out with dry compressed air. Fill the adjuster with clean motor oil and hold the bridge in a vertical position. Press up on the plunger. If the plunger seats hard against the oil in its extended position, the adjuster is okay. If the adjuster does not seat hard against the oil, it should be removed and inspected. Press down on the plunger and remove the snap ring and remove the plunger, spring, ball retainer, and ball from the body. Thoroughly wash all parts in clean solvent and reinstall in valve bridge. Refill the adjuster with oil and again try the valve adjuster for operation. If your inspection shows the valve adjuster is defective, it must be replaced as a unit. A special puller is used to remove the valve adjuster assembly from the valve bridge. To install a new valve adjuster in the valve bridge, use the special tool provided for that purpose. After the adjuster has been installed in the valve bridge, install the valve bridge and adjuster assembly on the engine. After the valve bridge has been installed, turn the adjusting screw until the lowest valve contacts the lash adjuster. Then turn the adjusting screw in 1/2 turn more. Tighten the lock nut, being careful not to disturb the setting of the adjusting screw. These installations cover all types of hydraulic valve adjusters now being used by the Navy. Now for a brief summary. First, keep in mind that the zero lash hydraulic valve adjuster is simply a unit which automatically adjusts its own length to compensate for expansion, contraction, and wear in the valve train. Second, troubleshooting in connection with the hydraulic valve adjuster is extremely simple. Trouble is always indicated by excessive noise. Trouble in the adjuster itself will be due to a leaking check valve, incorrect clearance between plunger and cylinder, or plunger stuck in the cylinder. If trouble is not in the adjuster itself, it must be in the oil supply. This may be no oil, not enough oil, or the oil pressure is too high. The third point to be remembered is that servicing the hydraulic valve adjuster involves only removal, cleaning, testing, and replacing. Fourth, cleanliness of the oil supply is absolutely essential to satisfactory adjuster operation. Fifth, after zero lash adjusters are cleaned, tested, and replaced, clearance should be checked with no oil in the adjusters. Clearance must be checked and corrected if necessary whenever valves and seats have been reground. Sixth, expect newly installed zero lash adjusters to be noisy until they have become filled with oil. This may take from a few seconds to several minutes. And finally, remember that the hydraulic adjuster is a sturdy, completely automatic device which will deliver long, trouble-free service provided it is correctly handled and is supplied with clean oil at the correct pressure. Upon the satisfactory operation of the valve adjusters depends the operation of the valves themselves, the efficiency of the engine, and the kind of job that the ship will do as a fighting unit.